Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mojo podcast. My name is Joanne, and I'm your host. And as always, I'm coming to you from my home in Calgary, Canada. And today is Saturday, July 15th. You'll probably notice I've changed my background a little bit. I've just moved around a little bit in my house, trying to get slightly better light. I actually initially hoped I might podcast sort of from my living room facing the windows and getting better direct light. But it is super hot here, and it's been super hot. I was actually going to try and record it last weekend as well, and it was super hot all last weekend. It was up into 31, 32, 33 degrees Celsius, which is high 90s, I think maybe. High 90s, close to 100 Fahrenheit, somewhere in that range, and which is not super normal. I mean, we do get a little bit of that weather in the summers here in Calgary in July, and we've been getting more of it. Welcome to global warming, or climate change as they call it now. This time of year it's warming for sure. And the problem with that, I mean, I know I've lived in places that are much hotter, and I know lots of people that live in places that are hotter, and, I travel to Mexico where it's much warmer and stuff. But the problem here, of course, is that most people don't have air conditioning in their homes. I have air conditioning where I work, which is nice, although you have to kind of dress, I have to dress for the outside weather and then take things to put on when I'm inside at work, the sort of opposite of the winter. But yeah, in our home we don't have any air conditioning, as a lot of people don't here. And our house, most of our large windows in our house face to the west. And in the afternoon we get direct sunlight beating down on that side of the house and beating down on the larger windows. So we've developed this system when it gets this hot. It wasn't so hot through the middle of the week, but last weekend it was all weekend it was really hot, and this weekend again it's hot. They keep issuing what they call heat advisories or heat warnings, and so we've developed this sort of system in our house where we cool the house down in the evenings, like once the sun is sort of behind the house next door and we're not getting any direct sunlight either on the side of the house or even on that part of the yard, and the temperature starts to cool down a bit into the yard. Well, we open up all the doors and windows in our living room, which has the big giant windows. They're actually sliding doors onto a small balcony. We open that up and put a fan in there and draw in the cooler air, which is really nice, and it will cool the house down fairly well. And then generally we'll get up quite early in the morning, like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, open it all up again, put the fans on, pull more of that nice cool morning air in, and then about 9:30 or 10 in the morning we shut it all down and kind of turn it into a cave. We close all the doors and all the windows, and we draw the blinds on all the windows and keep it quite dark and keep the hot air out. And it actually works reasonably well. It cools up the house, keeps the house at a decent temperature until the evening when we can sort of open everything up again until we go to bed. But as you can imagine, with all the doors and windows closed and all the blinds drawn and everything, it's pretty dark. As I said, it's kind of like a cave in here. And to keep it at that nice cool temperature, we keep a lot of the lights off as well. So that is not ideal for podcasting, obviously. Today is a warm one again, but I definitely wanted to get this podcast out. So as I said, moved around the house a little bit to a different, mostly angle in the room to try to keep the lights a little lower and not get so much directional light on me. As I'm looking into actually buying a proper photography light so that I can have some better lighting for when I podcast. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm trying to keep as many kind of lights off as I can and still get some decent lighting. I also have a fan on that side of the room facing me. Hopefully that's not going to cause a whole lot of noise. It's not very loud, so hopefully it's not going to be a problem. Anyway, yes, that's what's mostly been going on here, is we've been doing all these things to dodge the temperatures. And of course it's the Stampede is going on here in town. Those of you who are Canadians probably know about the Calgary Stampede, and some Americans might, and people from other countries, but you might not know. Calgary has a big event in July of every year called the Calgary Stampede. It's 100 years, I believe it's an anniversary this year or somewhere around. Anyway, I don't pay a lot of attention, but it's been going on for a long time. It's considered the largest, I think, outdoor rodeo and show on earth, I do believe, maybe. It is an enormous, one part of it is a rodeo, and there's then an enormous rodeo. There's an enormous Western show that goes on around that. There's all kinds of different exhibits and activities and things that kicks off at the beginning of the Stampede. It's a 10-day event in July, and it kicks off at the beginning with a huge parade through downtown Calgary. And then there's also a gigantic, ever-growing, huge midway rides and games and all that kind of thing, and all kinds of food stuff. It's enormous. Brings many tourists to the city for that 10 days to come to the Calgary Stampede. And we live very close to the Stampede grounds, like a 15-minute walk from our house, which is nice if we want to. We haven't gone to the Stampede much in the last few years. We went a bit more often when my nephews were little, and we would take them. But it's, as these kind of events are, it's horrendously expensive. We found, for the day for my husband and I to go and take our two nephews when they were a bit littler, let them go on some rides and get something to eat down in the grounds, have some snacks and treats and things, and the admission onto the grounds. We found basically we were spending about $200 for an afternoon, which is a bit pricey. So we don't always go. We're actually going to go down a little bit. Tomorrow's the last day, and we're going to go down a little bit and hang out. And my husband, as a musician, has musician friends who are playing down on the grounds, and we're going to go hang out at one friend's gig. He actually dropped us off some guest passes so we can get in for free, and we'll go down and hang out at Melvin's gig for a little while, and maybe walk around the grounds a little bit and see a few things, and that'll be our contribution to Stampede. But that's been going on all week. It makes it very busy in the part of town where we live, obviously, because we live so close to the Stampede grounds. Makes it noisier than usual, and a lot of traffic. There are fireworks every night at the end of the there's a show at the grandstand every night, and at the end of the show there are fireworks, and so we hear that every night at about 11:30. Plus it draws lots and lots of people up to the top of the hill that we live on too. It's a great vantage point from up on the bluff to see the fireworks. So yeah, that's kind of been a busy time in our life here, and I live where we live, and then where I work is not, again, I don't work very far from where I live. I work in the it's called Arts Commons. It's the large Calgary Performing Arts Centre. Many of the theatre companies I work for are housed in that building, and the company I'm working for currently has their offices there, and I'm working there. But the Stampede lays sort of between my house and work, so I have to get through all that every day. To the parade day that was last Friday goes right by the building that I work in, so we basically just didn't go to work last Friday, which suited me fine. But as I said, I kind of intended that. I thought, I have extra days off this weekend, I was going to podcast, and then it was just too stinking hot. So hopefully it's not going to get too hot today. And speaking of which, I should get on to stuff and not make this too terribly long of a video. Will lessen my chances of sitting here sweating in front of you, which is charming, I know. Anyway, I have one finished object this week. It is not it's not a knitting project, it's a sewing project. You're not going to be able to see it really well. I might try and stand up and show it to you. It's my dress that I made. I showed it off on the podcast last week while I was still in construction of it. I was about halfway through the sewing of it. It is from a pattern by from the website 100 Acts of Sewing. What is the dress? It's dress number 1, I believe, is the pattern. Dress number 1. It's a very simple sort of jumper, sort of tunic dress, I guess. Comes to just above my knee. It's got pockets. It fits actually really nicely. It was really easy to sew. I am not an experienced sewist. I sewed, in home ec, and then for a little while after that when I was a teenager, and then I haven't really sewed much again other than project bags since then, really. And it was actually it comes with this lovely booklet. All of her patterns do. It's a very well printed booklet. As you can see, the instructions in it are really well laid out. It's really fantastic. And I had no problem. I sewed the whole thing in about 2 days. I think I was, like I said, halfway through when I showed it off to you last time, and I finished it the next day after I podcast. So that was great. I think all in all, it probably took me about 8 hours worth of sewing, which for a total novice is really good. And that included doing French seams on the inside. That included making my own bias tape, which is their instructions for in the pattern, to do the bias tape edging all around the arms and the neckline. The only problem I had, and this, I will definitely be making this again a couple of times. I think I'd like to do one out of a sort of lightweight denim. I think that would be, these are the kind of things I like to wear this in the summer. Also, I can wear it in the winter. I would just throw it on over a long sleeve t-shirt and leggings. It's practical, comfortable for work. Like I said, I'd like to make one out of a lightweight denim. I'd love to make one out of a linen if I can find some nice linen. The only problem I kind of ran into was you put it all sort of together, the front and back together, and then you cut in the neckline. It just basically gives you instructions to cut in the neckline to whatever depth you want it to be, which is nice. It doesn't have to, I think it would have been about here when I started. And I generally like a bit of a lower neckline, especially if I'm going to wear it over a t-shirt. Like I said, like a white long sleeve lightweight t-shirt. It would be nice to sort of see that underneath here. But I may have cut it a little bit deeper than I should have. I might cut the second one slightly less. But when I put the bias tape on afterwards, I found that it was doing, let's see, it was sitting like that a bit too much, and I couldn't get it to lay flat. And that probably has to do with the sort of depth, and maybe, I guess the depth, probably I cut it too. Maybe also my lack of skill at making the bias tape and attaching the bias tape. But so I actually put 2 little darts in right here. Now the only problem with this is that I had actually put all the bias tape, of course, and everything on first, and then I put the darts in, which drew it in. But putting the darts in after you put the bias tape means that it has a little tiny bit of, there's a little fold over right there. You can't really see it when I'm wearing it, which is great. And I would do that again. I will definitely probably do that again. I like kind of the way it fits with just a little dart in there too. And I think if you notice me probably adjusting these shoulders, if I was doing it again, I might even do that a little bit more to draw that in. Because overall, actually the fit of this is fits me quite well. I chose a good size. I'm happy with the fit through the body. It's a little bit loose, but just a tiny bit. And that's the way I kind of like. I like garments that I can move in and aren't super body hugging. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. The fabric I used is really nice. It's just a really lightweight cotton, and so it's very comfortable to wear for this kind of weather. I'm wearing it today with just a little pair of sort of legging shorts, bicycle shorts, I guess you'd call them, kind of underneath. And I wore it to work with some mid-calf leggings that I have, some nice gray sort of mid-calf leggings. It would look really nice. I can throw a sweater over it. It's very versatile, and as I said, I'm going to definitely make a couple more of these. I'm going to just pick out some more fabrics for it. I do have, as I said, I do have a flannel plaid that I want to make one for a wintertime one. That may be my next one, but I also want to pick up some denim, and then I want to see if I can search. I may have to go online, I think, to buy some decent linen. They didn't have any at the fabric store I was at before. Anyway, so that is my finished object, which I'm very proud of. I will stick in at the end of the video, I will stick in a photograph I took of the finished dress. It's not me wearing it, unfortunately, because I was taking the picture, but it is a picture of the finished dress, so you can see it a little better, because you'll see the whole thing. Yes, so in terms of knitting, which is what we're primarily here to talk about, it's what I talk about every week on the podcast. I don't have any finished objects this week. I have some good progress on the few things I have been working on. As I said, it's super hot, and I find it a little hard when the weather gets too hot and sticky. I find it hard to focus on really doing much knitting. Even socks and stuff, I lose a bit of, well, I think part of it is just it's hot. I kind of don't want to do anything. I just sort of sit on the couch with the fan pointed at me and whine at my husband about how hot it is. But I certainly found the main project that I've been working on, which I've talked about the last couple of my episodes of the podcast, is my So Faded sweater, and I am very near the end on it. However, sitting with a giant lump of wool on my lap in the hot weather is not ideal. So, and of course, like I said, all last weekend, and I had an extra day off, was super, super hot. And that was when I had a lot of knitting time, was that weekend. And I couldn't bring myself to do anywhere near, I don't think I touched this Friday or Saturday. I may have worked on it Sunday. Yeah, I think I maybe worked on it a little bit Sunday because it did cool down a little bit or yeah. But mostly I've been working on it a bit in the evenings over the week, which has been a bit cooler and a little bit easier to work on it. And I am so close to being done. I'm not going to talk about this in tons of detail today because I'll talk about it hopefully next time I record. Chances are really good next time I record this is going to be finished. And I'll talk about it in more detail, I think, when it's a finished object. But this is the So Faded Sweater by Andrea Mowry, who's got the several other, the So Faded, or the Find Your Fade shawl, and there's, I think, Fade It, or there's another faded shawl that she's got out now. It employs the same technique, which, as I said, I also did a faded tunic about a year ago. I think, as I've mentioned before in the podcast, I did that tunic actually before everybody and their dog was doing a fade. I thought I was being quite original in my realization that I could use up single skeins of yarn, and so now everyone's doing it, but that's all right. Which is the front and which is the back. This is the front. Okay. I really have enjoyed knitting on this. I have finished, obviously, the body, and I have got one sleeve done, and I am just starting to fade. I'm just about ready to just started on the second sleeve, and I'm just about, I think, to start fading in the second color on that sleeve, or the next color, I should say. I'm making this sweater out of skein yarn, skein from Australia, skein yarn top draw sock, which is an 85-15, I think. There's 15% nylon in there. It's a very, very soft and luxurious merino nylon blend. I have made socks in this. I made several pairs of socks in this. I don't like it as much for socks because it is so soft and luxurious, and it does pill a bit more than I like. But it is fantastic for sweaters. The fingering weight, it's a fingering weight, obviously, and it's just so soft and cozy. And this is going to be a lovely sweater for throwing on, you know, over t-shirt and things in the winter time. I did make it a little oversized, and again, I'll talk more about this when I finish it, but you know, I did that on purpose. I maybe made it a bit more oversized than I needed to. So we'll talk about fit and stuff when I finish it, but I'm really loving it. And as you can see, the colors are just beautiful in there. All the colors will be listed in my show notes that I'm using, and again, I'll go into more detail about it in the next episode. But so that's what's got the majority of my time when I've been knitting at all. I have one other project that has had a fair amount of time for me, and that is my pointelle socks. Pointelle. It's a Cookie A pattern. I'm doing these for our Cookie A knit along. And I've been really enjoying these socks. This is one, Cookie A does so, as we've talked about before, and I should say, for those of you who may not know that, or remind you that I am running a knit along in our Ravelry group, which is Creative Mojo. And if you search on Ravelry in the groups tab under Creative Mojo, you'll find a group. You should come along and join it. And we have a knit along going on there. It was scheduled to go till the end of July. I am thinking seriously that I'm going to extend it a little bit. Summer's such a busy time for people, and with holidays and heat and all the reasons why you might not get as much knitting time. So I may very well extend it to the end of August, and hope to allow a few more people to participate and finish up projects. But and I think I said you can enter more than once. So if you have finished and put a pair into the finished object thread, and I extend it to August, you can always do another pair if you're interested. You could even do the same pattern twice. If you did monkey socks, you could do another pair of monkey socks if you wanted. Anyway, I did start another pair of Cookie A socks in June. Those haven't had any work on them in a bit, but I've been whipping through these. This is the first sock finished. It's not blocked. So it will look different when it's blocked. Partly this is all lace, so this will all open and even out. Plus, yeah, it'll clean up when it's blocked. And when I show it to you, again, probably I will have these done by the next step. If I record 2 weeks from now, I imagine I will have these done by then. I will block them before I show you the finished object so you can see the difference. But that's the obviously front. There's the back of the leg. And this is one of her, she's done several patterns, quite a few patterns that exercise this sort of technique of designs that swirl around the leg. And I love doing those. They're really enjoyable. This is, I mean, they look so fancy and elegant and smart, and the lace creeps this sort of wraps around the lace, which is really lovely and interesting. So it starts with a twisted red cuff, a little bit of lace, and then this that swirls around, and then you go back to knitting the lace again, and by the time you're on the foot, the front of the foot is all lace. And as I said, she's done quite a few patterns that utilize some form of this sort of design that swirls around the leg, and they look great. They're really impressive when people see them. When you wear them, people are like, wow, those are so cool. They're not that hard to knit. This is not as hard to knit as it might look from all that's going on in the pattern. The only, I whipped through this first sock in about a week, which is pretty good for, mostly some evenings of knitting and a little bit of knitting on the hot days on the weekend. I knit it out. I'm knitting them out of the Fawn and the Fox in her Badger base, which is a 75% BFL, 25% nylon, I think. And the color's fantastic, isn't it? Beautiful. It's a terrarium, and it's obviously this green with like some little speckles and pops of darker green, a little bit of sort of yellowy orange, a little bit of, it's kind of orange, caramelly orange, little pops of pink. Yeah, I love the color, love the yarn, love the pattern. So I said the only kind of thing I ran into is that the chart for this particular pattern is the full chart of all of the stitches. I'm knitting those. There's two sizes, a 60 stitch size and a 70 stitch. I went for the 70 stitch, which is more stitches than I normally do in a sock, but because of all this biasing as it wraps around, I knew that this was going to be a bit tighter than usual. So, and I didn't want to put in all that work and have them be too small, so I went for the 70 stitch size, which fits actually quite nicely. So I would recommend that unless you normally knit a smaller size sock, like a 56 stitch or a 60 stitch, in which case you might be comfortable with the 60 stitch smaller size of the pattern, but otherwise I would suggest you might want to try the 70 stitch. So the chart has all 70 stitches just laid out in the chart, what's nice, the other thing that's nice is every second row, and this is a rest row, you just knit around, and then you knit the next row of the chart, and then you just knit around, then the next row of the chart. But you have to kind of follow the whole chart because it's changing and doing all of this stuff, right? So actually, if you're looking at it, the chart that way, because I'm knitting from top down. It took me a while to kind of get into some rhythm and flow where I didn't have to kind of look at every what was next on the stitch. I did realize after a little while that like this lace, even though it's not really laid out that way in the chart, it is a 10 stitch repeat essentially. So I was able to not have to have my eyes totally glued to the chart all the time, which is good. I am now on to the second sock, which is coming along. I just started, this is the second sock, and I just finished the lace that's at the top, and I've just started that sort of ribbing and eyelets biasing that goes along. The fun thing is that these socks are mirror image, so this one will bias, this one will twist around the leg in the exact opposite direction from this one, which is also cool. So there's two sets of charts, obviously, one for the right leg, one for the left leg. But I'm coming on quite well with these, and they actually, when I spend a little time on this, it actually went fairly speedily. So yeah, those are coming along. I'm really enjoying them a lot. Again, the pattern is pointelle. They'll be in the show notes, which you can find in our group on Ravelry. And there's one other thing that I just started yesterday now, which is a little hat, a little baby hat. This is for a friend, this is for a friend who wants to give this to another friend of hers who had a baby not that long. Well, baby's probably a year old now, but this is the beginning of it. I'm not totally using pattern. I'm kind of just doing my own thing from looking at a couple of patterns on Ravelry, looking at some pictures, and what I'm going to show you, it's all free. These are free patterns, so I'm not pattern hacking anybody's paid for work, but I took sort of two free patterns, one that was kind of the design that I wanted and one that was the size that I wanted, and I'm kind of mashing them up to make this work. And there's a sort of funny story with this hat, actually. This is for, as I said, a friend of mine, Diane, who I work with. I've known for a long time, and I've worked with on and off for a number of years. And she had asked, and I've gifted her some knitting in the past. I made a beautiful shawl that I gifted to her that she wears all the time, and she's lovely and she's very appreciative. She's not a knitter at all herself or interested in it, but she's very appreciative of being gifted knitting things and always very complimentary of my knitting when she sees it. So and she had asked me last year. She had as I said, some friends who had a baby, and they're huge big football fans, and they go to football games here in the fall. And our football games, our football season here can last kind of into late October, maybe early November. I can't remember. Maybe late October is when the Grey Cup is, maybe. Anyway, but it gets cold. Our football season does last long enough into the year that it does there have been, there can be football games in the snow. And the stadiums are, like our stadium here in town is not covered. So people are very brave and bundle up in loads and loads of layers of clothes and go to the football games. And these friends are big football fans, and so she knew they'd be taking their baby to football games, and she had asked me when I had some time, would I make a football hat for her baby? And this is what I'm patterning it or doing after. You can see how cute is that. It's a hat that looks like a football. She had seen a baby wearing one of those, I think, and asked me could I make that, and I had said yes. And she said no rush, whenever. I mean, obviously football season won't be starting up here until, I think it maybe starts up next month, maybe, or maybe it started up already. What do I know? I don't know from football. But anyway, so I hadn't done it for a while after she'd asked me about it, and then she's on vacation right now, and if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that I posted about this morning. She's on vacation, and she's gone to Iceland. It's a vacation and family reunion. I guess I didn't know, but I would guess that means some of her family are from Iceland. And yesterday morning, I got a text from her with a photograph, and she was in a yarn store in Iceland, and she was like, what would you like me to buy you some yarn? There's some, I had mentioned to her, I think, we were talking about a vacation, and I said I was jealous because Iceland, I knew has beautiful Icelandic lopi yarn, lots of it, and knitting is a pretty big craft there, from what I understand, and I've seen lots of pictures, and I'm sort of jealous of it. So she sort of knew that from us talking, and I guess she went and found a yarn store. And she, like I said, she texted me and sent me a photograph and said, do you want me to bring you home something? If so, what colors would you like? And there was this whole wall of all of these beautiful colors of lopi. So I texted her back and said, well, it kind of depends on what the weight of the yarn is. Is it, worsted or fingering or whatever? And what the cost is, because she's going to pick it up, but I'm going to give her money for it. I'm not expecting her to buy me yarn. And and then, as I said to her, also depends how much room she has in her suitcase and how much she's willing to bring back. So she texted back and said, well, why don't you call me? She said, I'm in the arm shop right now. Call me and we'll talk through it. So I called her, and so she was talking to the shop lady in the shop in Iceland, and she was saying, oh, some of these yarns are worse weight. They were several different weights. Some of them were fingering, and I had pointed at from the photograph a couple of colors I liked, and she found out the price. It was very, very reasonably priced. I think it worked out to about $5 or $6 Canadian a ball, somewhere in that area. And so we figured out sort of with yardage. I got a fingering weight Lopi, which I thought would make a lovely shawl. So I got two colors, a beautiful sort of lovely rich lavender purple and a cream, and I thought those would be really pretty for a shawl of some kind. And 3 balls of each in a fingering weight. They're 50-gram balls, I think. It's always really interesting buying yarn through somebody over the phone, particularly somebody who's not a knitter. but it was great, and she was excited and I was excited, and so I got off the phone and she sent me another picture of what she'd purchased for me, and she was very thrilled to do it. It's great. So after I got off the phone, well, I went to work. That was in the morning that happened. I came home from work last night and I thought, oh, I need to get on that hat that I promised Diane months and months and months ago. She's been so sweet doing this for me, so I better get on that hat. So I'm on the hat, and this will go really quickly. I actually suspect that I'll finish this up over the weekend. But yeah, it's gonna be really cute. It's just worst weight. I don't know what the brown yarn is. It's something that was buried deep in my stash. The white is a ball of Drops Charisma, which is just 100% wool. Again, deep stash. I've had this in my stash for, I don't know, 5 years, 5 years maybe, a long time. It was gifted to me in a swap, actually, from a friend in Norway several years ago. And as I said, just a ball of some kind of brown worsted weight that was in my stash. This is worsted weight yarn. I'm doing it on a 4.5 millimeter needle. The little stitching that's on a football that you see that was in the picture there, in that pattern, she crocheted that onto the front. I may just stitch it on, or I may try the crochet. There's some links to some tutorials for that too, so we'll see. But this is about an hour and a half's worth of work, so obviously this is whipping up pretty fast, especially because it's for a 1-year-old, so it doesn't have to be very big. Although I'm hoping I'm making it big enough that he'll be able to wear it for a little while. So that's the only other project I've actively been working on. But I have 2 other things. I have a little bit of stash acquisition to show you. And I have one other sort of topic I wanted to talk to you about, because I've been doing some sorting and tidying through. My knitting tends to periodically take over a corner of our living room. I have a whole room downstairs that has my stash and my fabric and some work stuff, but mostly it's a small room, but it's still a whole room. It has all my knitting stuff and has all my knitting stuff. And yet the projects that I'm sort of working on or have worked on recently and things like that live up in a corner of our living room. And periodically it sort of takes over that whole corner of the living room and takes over half the end of that end of the couch. And I find it a bit overwhelming when I look and see how many sort of abandoned works in progress are sitting there. And B, my husband starts to get a little grumpy about how much of the living room I'm taking up with all that stuff. And I was looking at it last week and I thought, I need to tidy that up, and I need to kind of get a handle on that a little bit, because, as I said, it kind of starts to stress me out when there are a lot of projects, particularly because I know there are a lot of them that end up sitting there in a bag for a while and don't get worked on. There's a reason kind of why I abandoned working on them. And so I tidied up, went through the bags that were there, looked at everything that all the whips that were in that kind of pile, and made some decisions. There are ones that I definitely still want to work on and finish, and so I kind of made a priority of these projects. The projects I've shown you today, plus there's 2 others, are the ones I want to finish now. So I left those projects upstairs. The sweater I'm working on, the socks I'm working on, my knee socks, which have seen a tiny bit of work, but not enough to have been worth showing you today. But those are kind of next after I finish these Cookie A socks. the hat now will join that pile. And then there's a shawl that I'm partway through that I'm doing for a friend, and that's sort of next to get finished. Those are the ones to get finished now, and once those are done, I will bring back up the next set of 2 or 3 projects that, like anything that's a work in progress that I've taken downstairs, but that I want to get back to. That there's another sweater partially done that I'm knitting for a friend that I want to get at as well. So, as I said, I thought if I have less projects up here, I am like more likely to focus on those and finish them, and they're not taking up anywhere near so much of the living room. So I was doing that, and as I was going through all those projects, I realized there were also some projects that I needed to make some decisions about, some things that have been sitting half done on the needles for a while. One of them is probably 3 months old, and one of them is like 4 years old, 3 years old. One of them has been around a long time. And I was thinking about it, thinking there are often really good reasons why I kind of abandon a knitting project, like especially for 3 years, that long of a time. And I was thinking about, people always talk about whether they're a process knitter or a progress knitter, or process knitter or a product knitter. And I realized I am either one or the other with my projects, and it varies. Like sometimes I'm totally a product knitter. I'm knitting on that thing because I really want that item. I want that pair of socks. I want that sweater. I want that shawl, whatever. And that will keep me going through a project, because if it's working out well and I'm liking how it's going and I want that thing, I will keep working on it till it's finished. And sometimes I'm doing it because I'm really enjoying that knit. It may be something I'm going to give away or whatever, but I'm enjoying working with that yarn. I'm loving those colors. I'm enjoying that pattern. I'm really enjoying that knit, and that will keep me going through a pattern. So generally, when I kind of abandon something for any length of time, there's something gone wrong in one of the other of those. And for example, I mean, I have another shawl that has been on the needles for a year. I'm not isn't totally, well, let me back up. Sorry, let me start with the ones I want to show you, because all the projects I'm going to show you, I've decided to frog, because I took a long hard look and went, am I going to finish this? Do I want to finish this? So that goes back to what I was saying about what's driving me to keep working on a project. So I was like, do I want this finished object? Is there a reason why I know I'm not going to be happy with this finished object, and so that's what's made me stop knitting on it? Or is there something, something gone wrong with it? Is there, or am I not enjoying the process? Is this not something that I'm having any fun knitting and feel good about working on or whatever? Am I going to go back to it? No. The honest answer to some of these projects is no, I'm not. So I thought I got to frog them. I got to reclaim that yarn, and it can become something else. And it's not a half-finished thing sitting in a bag with needles in it that could go back into my needle stash and keep me from buying new needles sometime soon. Beautiful yarn that I can make into something that I will enjoy more, not add to my guilt, all those kind of things, right? Alternatively, as I said, there were also a couple of there are some projects in there. I went, no, I actually am going to finish this. I may have stopped knitting on this for other reasons. There's a shawl that I started about a year ago that I stopped knitting on because it's made with 2 gradient sets, and I ran out of yarn in one of the gradient sets. And long story, and I'll tell you more when I haul that project out and try to finish it, but had to figure out how I could get more yarn and what I was going to do, and I got more yarn for it, which was great, from the dyer. She sent me another gradient set of that, but the colors aren't exactly the same as the first set, because of course it's a different dye lot, dyed like a year later. So I have to make some and it's a beautiful project, and I actually really love it. I want it. I enjoyed knitting it tremendously up to where I had to stop, all those things. But I have to make some decisions about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to alter it to work with what I've got in the way of yarn, because it's not perfect. So that got stalled. So there's also projects that get stalled for those kind of reasons, that I go, no, actually, I just need to take the time to think about that, how I'm going to fix that and get on with it. But I'm going to show you the ones that I've decided to frog, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I've decided to frog each one of these. Who knows, maybe I'll empower you to pull through some of your long languishing whips. Now this is the most recent one, and this is actually something I showed maybe 2 months ago, I think, something like that on the podcast. This is another Cookie A pattern. This is a beautiful pattern. It's called Twisted Flowers. Really enjoy it, but I decided, and I kind of felt this as I was knitting on it, that the variegation in this yarn actually is too strong for the pattern. The pattern doesn't show up anywhere near as much as I would like to see for all this beautiful, elaborate twisted stitch cabling that's going on here. Actually looks okay right now in that light, but that's better. So what this needs is, this pattern needs a lighter colored, non-variegated yarn to really make this pattern sing, and the pattern is so beautiful and so intricate that it's worth that. So these are getting frogged. This is lovely yarn, but I will knit something else with it, but not this. So I'm going to be ripping those out. That's going to be rip number 1. This is probably what I'm going to do for the rest of the afternoon today. Number 2. This is a big one, and this took some real thinking, but I decided that I am going to rip out my Find Your Fade shawl. This pattern just wasn't doing it for me. It's beautiful. I mean, I've seen so many gorgeous finished objects of other people's shawls, and I look at them and they're so pretty. I love the color play. I mean, I love color, and I love color play, and that's my jam with knitting. That's at the center of what I love so much about fiber and fabric and knitting and all that. But this, and it's nothing wrong with the pattern. It's just not for me. I just was struggling with this and struggling with this. The lace that's in it, I messed up so many times. I've knit lots of lace, but I can even see right now looking at it, like there's a section, I don't know if you can see, but right in there that's all messed up. It just doesn't look pretty to me. I wasn't crazy about the way the spine was looking and kind of how this was curling. That probably would have come out blocking, but and then I was looking at other people's and the size of them, and it's a huge thing, and that's great. I have a couple of huge shawls already. I actually don't wear the huge ones all that much. I tend to wear my shawls like scarves, and I sort of like the mid-sized ones the best, or I like actually smaller ones that I wear almost like a cowl. So I was like, I'm not sure how much I would actually wear it. I wasn't enjoying working on it. So what's the point, right? And all this gorgeous hedgehog fibers yarn could be something else. So, and who knows, maybe I'll start another one some other time, but right now this is just not doing it for me. Not enough to feel like, oh, I've got to get back to this and work on it. I would think about it all the time and go, oh, I should work on that. I'm going to work on this instead. So when I took a long, hard, honest look, I went, you know what? Rip this sucker out. So that's going to get frogged. And ow, I just stabbed myself with a knitting needle. Next one, another shawl. This has been sitting around since last summer. What was the name of it? This is one of it's the Asana shawl. It was one of Helen Stewart's lovely patterns from Shawl Society 1. I'm in Shawl Society 2 this year, and I haven't even finished the first pattern of that, but that's my next thing to finish up as soon as I get my sweater off the needle. So that I won't finish those in time for the end of the Shawl Society, but there are several patterns there I do love, so I will work on them. And it was the same last year. I didn't do all 6. There are 6 patterns that come in the Shawl Society. It's a 6-month subscription, if you don't know. And there were 6 patterns in that subscription, and I knit 3 of them, loved them. This was, I think, did I knit 3? Maybe I knit 2. Maybe I only knit 2. This was the 3rd. Anyway, I got stalled off on this. I'm about halfway through, and it sat in a bag for a year, and I have decided to pull it out. And I think the reason for this, I was like, so why do I not want to go back to this? It's a lovely pattern. I don't dislike the pattern at all. It's a very pretty yarn. This is yarn that I bought in Washington State last summer when we were traveling in Washington. It's a, I don't have the tag in here, but it's a merino silk blend, maybe. It's a lovely yarn. It's a very nice, but somehow the combination of pattern and the yarn just weren't exciting enough to me, is what it is that the color in this is, I normally knit with stuff with more color, right? This is a beautiful color, so like a lovely kind of caramel brown. It's actually really nice. It's a very nice yarn, but I find often with lace, because I have to look at the pattern so much more, and because I'm so much more rooted to the pattern, I often need a beautiful yarn that I'm really, really jazzed about to sort of help me keep pushing through as those rows get longer and longer, and there's more and more lace in there. It's often how much I'm loving that process with that yarn that's sort of pushing me through. Sorry if you can hear that noise, by the way. My neighbor to the back side of our house here has an ongoing, never-ending house improvement. Like, he's been building on to his house and doing additions and improving it. I swear to you, no word of a lie, from April to October, every summer for every spring, summer, fall for the last 10 years, non-stop. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more things keep adding on. So they're out there working. He's out there working on that today, and you may be hearing that noise. Anyway, long story short, it just wasn't doing it for me in this yarn. And I thought I would rather actually knit this yarn into a simple kind of patterned, textured maybe, probably textured kind of shawl or scarf for my husband. He's been asking for something like that for a while. I say shawl, he would never wear it as a shawl, but he's seen men wearing the nice knitted, sort of masculine looking bandana shawls, as lots of guys do actually, and he really wants one of those. And so I thought, something kind of in this kind of color, which he would really love and would look good on him and match lots of his winter wardrobe, and with a little bit of texture or something like that. So I'm gonna rip, and I have 2 balls of this yarn, 200-gram skeins. So I'm gonna rip this shawl out, reclaim this yarn, and for a project later on down the road, and who knows, I may knit the Asana shawl again at some point, but not with that yarn. So that's project number 3. And the last one is the one that's been sitting in this lovely bag for which was gifted to me by a friend in Australia. This has been in this bag for, like I said, 3, maybe even, no, definitely 3 years anyway. This is the Atelier sweater I started, knit out of skein yarn from Australia, which I'm knitting this is the Merino Silk Sport, which is a lovely 50% merino, 50% silk base. It's just the dreamiest yarn ever. I love this color, which is Wild Apple. This lovely sort of, this lovely kind of green. Well, kind of green. It is green. It's kind of an avocado-y green almost, though. Anyway, I started this, like I said, about 3 years ago. I got a fair amount of it. I got, it's knit from the top down, and you knit basically the sleeves first and then down the body, and I got both sleeves done. It has I-cord edging all the way around. Lovely pattern, but I was new to knitting sweaters, new enough that I hadn't done a lot of knitting of sweaters with alternating skeins of yarn, and my skeins didn't match up perfectly in color. I mean, not bad, but not perfectly enough that I thought, oh, I really should alternate skeins. You can kind of see here, because I alternated all through here, right? Breaking that slight color variation up was a good idea. However, I hadn't really figured out a good system for how to alternate the yarns. I was twisting them around, but they're really tight is basically what happened. So on this side, the place where I was not alternating skeins, which side is which. It's this side. Okay. This is the side where I was not alternating skeins. Has lots of give in there, lots of stretch. It's great. This side, I was pulling too tight, essentially. Not so much. It's starting to pucker up a little bit, and I realized it's actually going to be longer on this side than this side. And I was like a substantial way into the body of this when I realized that I had a difference of about, at that point, 1/2 inch in length from side to side because of how much tighter I was pulling the yarn when I was alternating the skeins. So I got frustrated by that, knowing I wasn't happy with that idea. I put it in this bag, took it and left it downstairs in the basement forever. I need to reclaim this yarn. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll even knit that sweater again. It's a lovely pattern. It says it's called Atelier. It's an open front cardigan. Or maybe I'll knit something else. But this is such a lovely yarn. I really, really need to just rip it out, wash it, gently wash it, because this merino silk does tend to pill a bit. Reclaim it and knit something else with it. So that's pattern number 4, or project number 4 that's going to get a frog. So I'm actually feeling pretty good about that those 4 projects that have been stalled out for various lengths of time and various reasons that are actually just going to get ripped out and the yarn will go for something else. So that's that. And I'm looking at the time going, oh my gosh, I'm rambling on. So I want to finish off. The last thing I'll really just quickly mention actually is that one of my local yarn stores here, Stash, you probably heard other Calgary podcasters, if you follow any of the other Calgary podcasts, talk about Stash. It's a fantastic yarn store. And it's nice and close to my house, like walking distance from my house, which is good and bad, as you can imagine. And they're closing up their current location and they're moving just down the block, like 2 doors down and across the street, into a much larger space, which is really exciting because it obviously means room for more yarn. And they're having a sale this weekend. Hopefully if I get this podcast up and you see it before, I'll get it up tonight probably. So if you see it tomorrow, which would be Sunday, the sale is on all day Sunday too. Everything out in the store is 30% off. Books, needles, yarn, everything. Until the end of the day on Sunday. Then next week they're going to be closed and moving, and then they have a big grand reopening on the Saturday the 22nd, which I will go to. I'm very excited about, and I will take my camera and get some footage of that grand opening. So yeah, that's going to be hard on the pocketbook. But anyway, yesterday afternoon, I get the email that talks about the schedule, the sale, the grand opening, all that kind of stuff. And I realized the sale was on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They had just sent that email out. I was like, oh, Friday afternoon. If I go soon, I'll have the best chance of good choices of yarn in the store before everybody else and their dog hits it on Saturday and Sunday. My office mate that I share the office with, he laughs at me because he was listening to me look at this, or I was looking at the sale and I said something about it, and he said, why are you going to go now and buy yarn? Because it was sort of the end of the day anyway. I said, well, I'm thinking about it. It's kind of, just a question of from work getting there. And he said, I have to go that direction and go to a store that was right 2 blocks down from that. He said, do you want to go now? I'll drive you. And I was like, oh, Johnny, you're enabling me. So he did. He dropped me off at the yarn store and I went in and I actually felt good. I was very restrained. At one point I had a whole huge sweaters quantity of yarn in my arms, and I put it back on the shelf because I thought I have so many sweater quantities that I haven't knit with yet. But I did pick up a couple of things, and I am excited about what I did pick up. I picked up 2 more skeins of yarn ink. I love this yarn. Again, it's another base that I just, when I find yarn where I love both the base and the color sense of the dyer, I tend to sort of stock up on it and hoard it, and yarn ink is a more recent one of my favorites. Her classic sock is just fantastic. It's just a really nice 75% merino, 25% nylon. It's great for socks, but it's also nice and soft for shawls and stuff. It's just a really nice kind of workhorse 75-25 standard classic sock, as it's called. It's great. Plus she's a fantastic, amazing dyer. So I picked up these 2 skeins. This color is called Smitten. Not pretty. And this one, which makes my heart sing, is called Diva. And I just thought those 2 will make a fantastic, probably a shawl together. Maybe like one of those Hohi Locatelli, like cardigan mailbox, or one of those fantastic 2-color Hohi shawls, I'm thinking maybe. So I picked up those, 30% off, can't sniff at that. And then I picked up a little bit of Brooklyn Tweed Loft. They've been selling Brooklyn Tweed at Stash for about a year maybe now, I think. I have a few single skeins. I picked up 3 skeins in this lovely gray. Hemmed and hawed. This is what I was considering getting a sweater quantity for. But it was, even at 30% off, that was going to be pretty pricey. And I watched a lady in the lineup in front of me unload a cart, kind of a bag or whatever of things she picked up, and fork over $350, and which I could have done in a heartbeat, and I'm glad I didn't do, because my husband would have not been super happy right now. We've had some car expenses and stuff like that, and so shelling out $350 for more yarn might not have made him so happy. But I was pretty impressed with the woman in front of me and her load, and kind of wishing I was her. I was watching, she was actually paying cash for it. And like, oh, that. Anyway, I got 3 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Loft, which is their fingering weight, 50 grams per skein. In the yardage is pretty good though, 275 yards, in the color Sweatshirt. Beautiful gray, really beautiful gray. Now I have some single skeins of Loft that I picked up last year on Bainbridge Island at Church Mouse Yarns, Bainbridge Island. I had got this color, which is called Tartan, and this color, Old World, which is, it's not bad, it's a dark navy blue, and this very light blue, which is Faded Quilts. And all of these actually would make some kind of fantastic striped or color worked or something. And I might actually, I don't know, I might pick up one more extra color, I don't know. Anyway, I'm excited to try this out. I have knit with Shelter once or twice before, like a couple of hats and things, which I really enjoy. I really love that yarn. So I'm looking forward to knitting with this with the fingering weight, which I haven't yet. So that's all I picked up, was the three gray skeins of Shelter and the, or not Shelter, but Loft, and the 2 yarn inks. So that was pretty restrained for me. That's everything I think that I wanted to talk to you about today. I don't think I said at the beginning, but thank you all. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming back and checking me out week after week. I really appreciate it. I love interacting with you guys in the group and on Instagram and stuff, and here on YouTube with comments that you leave are fantastic. And if you're a new viewer, I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope you'll consider coming back and checking me out again. You can always subscribe in the down bar below, and you, as I said before, come join our Ravelry group. And that is everything I have to speak to you about today. It will probably be about 2 weeks before I record again. Between now and then, happy knitting.